How's it going, YouTube? Toon Raider here. We are back with some Dragon Discourse action. Joining me, as always, the illustrious I Do Name. Say what's up, I Do Name.
What's up?
That's right. There's his what's up, iconic as always. Now, today we're going to be talking about Dragon Ball Daima. But before we get into that, Phantom Flame is actually in the chat. He says, "For thousands of years I lay dormant. Who has summoned me?" I said Phantom. He says, "How's it going?" In case you guys aren't aware, this is a live podcast chat. So if you have something to contribute to the conversation, go ahead and let us know. I'm doing great, Phantom. How are you feeling, I Do Name?
I'm feeling pretty good.
All good vibes around here. Now,
Excited.
I Do Name, you actually just finished the episode before we went live, just to make sure we had all of our ducks in a row, and boy, it was stellar. The animation was stunning. Now, some people didn't like the finale because I guess they didn't like that Ku became the new Supreme Demon King. They wanted someone else to become the Supreme Demon King. So, piggybacking straight off the finale, we're going to talk about the whole series as a whole, but since you have the finale fresh in your mind, was it a fulfilling finale? Was it, like, satisfying to you?
I enjoyed the ending pretty much. I thought it was pretty funny, the main ending where they find the other eyeballs and stuff.
Yeah.
I thought that was like classic Dragon Ball goofiness, silliness, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, and I think that's what this series has really mastered, is the art of classic Dragon Ball silliness. So you're talking about the evil third eyes. Now, what I find funny is they're called evil third eyes, and there's 3 of them in total. Because, you know, there's the one Goma got, and then there's the 2 in the jar at that lady's shop. So they're called evil third eyes, and there's 3 of them. I just thought that was fascinating. So Toriyama was really a genius when he came up with this concept. He was really seeding it from the beginning, and none of us seen it, you know? I thought that was pretty neat. But anyway, so the evil third eye just go ahead and reveals that there's 2 more of them left. I don't know if they're setting up a season 2 or not, or if it was just a gag to finish it off. What do you think? Was it a some people think it's a tease for season 2. I think it could just be a gag. What do you think?
I think it's definitely just a gag because if you think about it, they probably would have just still bought those 2 and then put them up or destroyed them.
Yeah, and it was really easy for Glorio to destroy it because all you got to do is step on him, and then to get it out of Goma, you just had to knock him on the back of the head a few times. What did you think about that? About Ku being the guy to beat Goma? Did you feel like Goku's glory was taken away from him a bit?
I thought it was pretty funny, like I said, when we were watching it. The way Goku was coming down and didn't look angry or nothing. That was just classic Goku. Yeah. He looked proud. He was like, heck yeah, bet.
Yeah, Goku.
I didn't have to do it.
Goku tends to be pretty chill in these situations. Now, one thing that I definitely saw a lot of people upset about, I gotta be honest, I was a little bit upset myself, was seeing that the fusion bugs really went nowhere. I was expecting a new fusion, maybe Veku, or, Veku is already like a failed fusion of Goku and Vegeta using the fusion dance, the Metamorphin fusion, but, something along those lines, like a new fusion between Goku and Vegeta using the fusion bugs as an alternate method of fusion, similar to how the fusion dance and the Patara earrings produce 2 different fusions. Or even Goku fusing with Glorio or something crazy like that. But the fusion bugs really went nowhere. What did you think about that? Did you even register that they wasted the fusion bugs as a concept? Because there is this concept in storytelling where if you introduce something, then you have to pay it off. They introduced the fusion bugs. They did not pay it off. So what did you think about that?
In my opinion, I feel like they were just trying to show that there was fusion down in the demon world, and that maybe it wasn't a foreign concept.
Okay, I guess I can get that.
That's the only kind of logic that I can put behind it. Other than that, it's like you said, it's kind of just something they didn't use when they should have showed it off.
Yeah, and concepts get picked up all the time. You never know. Toyotaro may be working on Dragon Ball Super, and he's like, "Ooh, I want to expand on that fusion bug concept. Let's do some cool stuff with the fusion bugs." So, I'll go ahead and address Phantom Flame in the chat because we are still on the topic of the finale. He says it ends with a the end, so probably just a gag. That's true, it did. However, Battle of Gods ended very open-ended, and those got new adaptations, so they might have did exactly what they did with Battle of Gods and Resurrection F and continue with them later. That's true. I guess with Battle of Gods, it was like so successful, and it was like a new wave of hype, and they decided to capitalize on it. I'm not sure if that's what they're going to do here because we already know from Akio Iyoku that they already have like plans for like the next 10 years of Dragon Ball. Well, the next 9 now because I think that was last year when he made that statement. So since they're planning things so far in advance, it appears, I don't think that Daima Part 2 would necessarily be something that they surprisingly come up with. It's probably something else like another movie or something like that. But let's go ahead and I guess talk about the... Is it called a season or a series? I guess it'd just be called the series overall because the season was the series. So let's go ahead and get into like the broader discussion of the whole season. So I think like if you take like the first 10 episodes in isolation, maybe like the first 13 or 12, I guess you could say. I think it's about the first 12. You actually get a pretty good idea of like the adventurous tone. Like it felt very similar to OG Dragon Ball. And of course there was an interview where they talked about how they were kind of inspired by Dragon Ball GT, but Dragon Ball GT was also inspired by OG Dragon Ball, so the parallels are there. So I want to ask you this, Iduname. What was your attitude toward the first 12 episodes that were more adventurous and more, let's go to this world, let's beat this Tamagami, but first let's meet all these different characters and get used to like all these different cultures. Very similar to like OG Dragon Ball, but also Dragon Ball GT. What did you think about that whole mix?
I remember starting off thinking that it was going, like, before I even watched an episode, I was like, man, this is probably going to be a lame one-off show. And then I watched the first episode and saw how all the characters get turned into kids, which was a very interesting way to get everyone hooked onto the series, I think.
Yep.
Because everyone who is like into Dragon Ball and knows about the story has always wanted to know more about the demon world. So that right there was already a hook. But later on going into the series, I definitely got kind of bored at some of the parts. But there were some parts that I really enjoyed. Like, I think wasn't there multiple parts where Goku like farted in the ship?
Yeah, that was hilarious.
And Goku calling Glorio the wrong name literally until the very end of the series.
There was one time where he said it properly, but that was after he became an adult, and it was like a fulfillment of an arc. And then immediately after that, he goes back to calling him the wrong name.
Yeah, that was funny. That's literally such a Goku thing to happen to.
Yeah.
But I think that overall the story was actually pretty good. It, like you said, reminded me of OG Dragon Ball.
Right.
Especially with like the exploration and, like you said, learning the culture and just Kid Goku didn't know anything when he was exploring Earth with Bulma and stuff and learning about the Dragon Balls.
Hold up, that's a great point. Before we move on, that's a great point I never even thought about, but you just completely made it click. In OG Dragon Ball, Goku is like a kid. He's a mountain kid, never got a formal education. He doesn't know about anything about civilization. And Bulma basically takes him on a guided tour and introduces him to all these concepts. And that's literally what they're doing in Daima. So that is a fantastic point. I didn't even think about that.
Absolutely, that's what I'm here for.
Yep. But yeah, go ahead.
But yeah, overall, I think this series was awesome. I really enjoyed it. And the ending, using Super Saiyan 4 as like an icing on the cake, was amazing.
Yeah, we'll get into that. But yeah, the whole thing was enjoyable, I would say. Now, one thing I want to say is that my favorite part of the show, like if we're talking like, people have been saying like, there are no arcs to Daima, and it's just Daima. But I think there's actually 2 clear arcs. There is the Tamagami arc, which is like the first 13 episodes, I would say, where they fight Tamagami 1 and Tamagami 2, and they explore the first demon world and the second demon world. And then like I think it was from like episodes 14 onward was, well, I think episode 14 was with the Namekians, but I think like probably around episode 15 or 16 was the finale of like the big Goma fight and setup, because they go to the first Demon World expecting to get the Dragon Ball from Tamagami 1, but then they get there and they find that Do has already defeated Tamagami 1. So I think you could actually separate this into arcs if you wanted to get like into the nitty gritty and trying to like laser focus, point out, hey, this is where they get the Dragon Balls, there's a clear tonal shift, and then they go to the first Demon World. You know what I'm saying? But in terms of like what was my favorite aspect of this series, was it the exploration? What was it? I would say honestly, my favorite part was the Tamagamis, like Tamagami 1 and 2 and 3. Like just the whole concept of them being the guardians of the Dragon Balls, and you have to fight them, and then you have to do a test. I think that was a working concept for like the first, what was it, like 12 episodes. Yeah, so that was amazing. And then, of course, after that, they went to go fight Tamagami 1, but then they got into the whole big Goma climactic finale. But yeah, I loved the Tamagamis. They were my favorite part of the show. So I guess I'm gonna kick two questions at you. What was your favorite aspect of the show, and did you like the Tamagamis?
But my favorite part of the show, honestly, was all of the different characters. Like, for example, Pansy and her dad, and
I think his name was King
excuse me, sorry.
Codon.
Yeah, he was awesome. I thought they were really fun characters. Glorio, the lady, and the other person who was helping Goma, who looked like the Supreme Kai kind of. I
Yeah,
thought he was really interesting
yeah.
and cool.
Degasu was. I mean, people liked Degasu, but then I think people were expecting him to be a bigger villain than he ended up being. He was kind of, I guess you could say, wasted, but I don't know if they actually set him up to be anything crazy. I think the expectation came from Dragon Ball Heroes having these things called the Mikaelshin, which were, I think they're called the Demon Supreme Kai, and they're like the dark reflection of the Supreme Kai that we know. And of course, this is Dragon Ball Heroes lore, so it's not canon, and Toriyama wasn't that deeply involved with it. But from what I understand, I think people had that expectation from Degasu, so they thought that they were canonizing Demon Supreme Kai. But as we know, they're not called Supreme Kai; they're called Glens. And Shin or Nahare is the only Supreme Kai from our universe that we know of, and his brother and sister Degasu and Arinsu are just Glens. But yeah. So I guess that makes sense what you're saying, though. Was there anything else you wanted to add to that?
No.
All right, so I guess we can go ahead and talk about the lore, because the lore was like the main draw of this show. I mean, it was pretty expansive. Like, we got lore on like the Namekians, the Majins, like all the different Majins. Apparently, if you have pointy ears, you're a Majin. I remember thinking, oh, that's crazy. Like, every episode had something in it. And that's to Phantom Flame's point. He says, every episode had me shocked. Good experience. Yeah. I mean, we got the biggest lore of all. The origin of the multiverse. We saw all the Supreme Kai from Dragon Ball Super. We saw, like, the creator of the multiverse, whose name I've already forgotten. But he's there. He looks very similar to Zeno. So, I mean, yeah, this show had like so much lore and expanded on the backstory of Dragon Ball in such a deep way. What did you think about that? Did you like all the lore we got, like the Namekians? Because I remember in Dragon Ball Z, there was kind of the retcon that Namekians weren't demons; they're actually aliens. And then in Dragon Ball Daima, we got to confirm that they are aliens and they're also demons. They're aliens in the sense that they came from another place, but they're also demons in the sense that they came from the demon realm. You know what I'm saying? Like all this new lore that kind of mixes with it. What did you think about it?
I definitely now I honestly forgot about it until you just mentioned it again.
Uh
But
huh.
now that you've mentioned it and I've remembered, I do think that it's really cool that they expanded on that because people were really kind of going crazy with like I guess what is it theories and stuff
Yeah.
and just so it's kind of cool that they expanded on it. I didn't even expect them to do that. whenever they announced Daima and stuff, I didn't think it had anything to do with Super, but I definitely think it's cool that they included that.
Yeah, they definitely like tied it into Super. There was also like some contradictions to Super, like for example, Goku having access to Super Saiyan 4, and then in Dragon Ball Super, of course, we know that when he's fighting Beerus, he says that Super Saiyan 3 is his final transformation, and there's nothing beyond that. Now, Vegeta going Super Saiyan 3 can kind of make sense of because Super Saiyan 3 is a big stamina, like consuming form. So Vegeta wouldn't need to go Super Saiyan 3 and probably wouldn't want to go Super Saiyan 3. But like Goku, it seems like his Super Saiyan 4 form has no drawbacks. What I would do if I was writing this is after the big battle, I would have Goku like very visibly exhausted and say it has a bigger stamina draw than Super Saiyan 3 does. And that's how you would make sense of him not going Super Saiyan 4 in Dragon Ball Super. But honestly, I don't really care if there's a contradiction. There are contradictions all over Dragon Ball. For example, the Dragon Ball Z and Dragon Ball Super, we've understood that Super is the canonical follow-up to Dragon Ball Z, but in the End of Z arc, which is originally from Dragon Ball Z, Bulma remarks that I think she says that she hasn't seen Goku in 5 years, and I think she says it like, we haven't seen you in 5 years, so she's talking for Vegeta as well. But in Dragon Ball Super, like as recently as the superhero arc, that was within a year of the End of Z. So there's already contradictions. It's not anything that I'm really worried about. What do you think? Do you think like
I remember when people were saying like Broly and his like eyes were linked to the Super Saiyan 4 form or whatever, and that makes me wonder if his passing, like his sudden passing and stuff, just like what if Akira Toriyama planned on putting Super Saiyan 4 as like a really cool transformation later on and just wasn't able to, so now we just got this half-ass version of it.
Well, I think that's definitely like, well, we got to remember Toriyama was involved with this, and from what I understand, he designed Super Saiyan 4 because I think Nakatsuru, I think he was like in charge of overseeing all the art on this show. He said that Toriyama actually designed the form in an interview because he did a con recently. So Toriyama designed this Super Saiyan 4, and Nakatsuru was the original designer of Super Saiyan 4 from Dragon Ball GT. So I think the idea that Toriyama had was to basically make his own version of it, like how he made his own version of Broly, to your point. And I do think might be something to that, but again, Broly's form that you're talking about with the eyes comes from, I think, accessing the power of the Great Ape form. And the interesting thing about that is I think they've kind of changed the lore of the Super Saiyan 4 in Dragon Ball Daima, but not exactly, because whenever Goku transforms into Super Saiyan 4 in Dragon Ball Daima, you still do see the tail pop out. So it still does have some relation to the Great Ape form, I would assume, or at least the Saiyan heritage, like how Super Saiyan 4 originally had in Dragon Ball GT. So I guess there is a good argument to be made, like to your point, that maybe Broly could access Super Saiyan 4 eventually. You know, since he has access to the Great Ape power, that's a good theory. Broken Dimension says, I wonder if they'll make a new data book with all the Daima stuff and Super stuff. Daima feels like a data book in anime form. I think they will. I think like that's one thing that they always do is they make like tie-in products and things like that. I don't know about a manga. I think that's definitely not going to happen. But yeah, like a guidebook and stuff would be great. So let me go ahead and like go through the series a little bit more and talk about some of these other episodes that some people may not have exactly loved. Like episode 13, it had the giants. That's the first episode I did not like. What did you think? The episode with the giants. That's the first episode where I made my review, and I think I tried to be positive, but I just didn't like it. What did you think about it? Not a big fan of the giants, huh?
I'm trying to remember that one.
Yeah, it's kind of a forgettable episode because all they do is land there and like there's giants and they're really small and supposedly the giants are super powerful and they're just avoiding the giants.
That's not episode 13, I don't think. Is it?
Well, it might not be episode 13. I just have it down in my notes it was episode 13. But whatever episode it was not my favorite episode. That's for dang sure. I think it was also an episode where like the adventure part kind of started to drag a bit for me. But then, like, the next episode...
Okay,
Sorry, go ahead.
I remember the giant episode now, and yeah, that was fucking a very boring, stupid episode. I remember it so clearly now.
Yeah, and I said back then when I was reviewing it, if this ends up having an impact on the story, I'll like it. But they basically didn't do anything there. But then the next episode went into the Namekian lore, and then of course 15 and 16 was them going into the first demon realm. I did not like whenever they went into the first demon realm and there was all the gendarmerie around them, and they for some reason weren't transforming and just destroying all of them, and they were like running and trying to dodge the lasers and stuff. That was a little bit weak sauce for me. What did you think? Do you remember that, or is that something that's also like, it was so boring, it's kind of like in the back of my mind type thing?
Yeah, that one's also in the back of my mind, to be honest.
Yeah. But one thing I will say, though, do you remember the Gendarmerie Force? They were kind of like Ginyu Force-esque. Like, there were like
Yeah,
5 of them.
yeah, I do.
Now, some people hated them. They thought it was like a lame, like, rehash of the Ginyu Force. Here's something people may not understand. The Pry Troopers, you could make an argument that they're kind of a rehash of the Ginyu Force because it's that same concept. And they're playing with that same concept, but they take the Gendarmerie Force even further by establishing that they're not powerful characters like the Ginyu Force or the Pry Troopers. They're just silly. Maybe they're powerful by like Demon World standards, but yeah, they were pretty silly. What did you think? Did you feel disappointed by them? Because I thought they were pretty funny.
I thought they were pretty funny. Are they the ones that were in the supermarket buying candy,
Yeah, like,
snacks?
and I think that's like
Yeah,
where
they
the
were funny
confusion
as
came
hell.
from.
I like them.
Yeah, they were like really funny. I mean, there's really nothing other.
I did
Go
I
ahead.
did think it was kind of weird that they were copying like the Ginyu Force, but I didn't really like get mad at it or nothing. I just thought it was like an obvious ripoff of the Ginyu Force.
Yeah, well, it's a trope that Toriyama plays with a lot, like with Great Saiyaman, the Pride Troopers, other superheroes that appear in Dragon Ball, like Clean God
Yeah.
from Dragon Ball Super, the manga, that we'll also talk about in this stream. But let's go ahead and get into these chats before we continue. Broken Dimension says, I wonder if they'll make a new data book. Oh, I already read that. Dark Cloud Uchiha says, the Giants, I think there may be a manga version, but that leads to the other Giants or Ozaru. If you're talking about the Giants from Dragon Ball GT, I think that's what you're talking about, how they look very similar to the Giant in Dragon Ball Daima. Broken Dimensions, I didn't want to admit it at first, but Daima definitely has a lot of wasted time due to filler. Episode 13 was atrocious. I think there was some filler. I think for the most part, most of Daima, even if there was an episode that you thought was boring, there was still like important stuff happening in the episodes. Episode 13 is the only one where I was like, nothing important happened. We just landed on this planet of giants and like nothing happened. Like they got there and they left. Like, like it just wasn't for me. Phantom Flame says, I like the Giants had a simple design. Yeah, I like the Giants designs. They were good. I think they were designed by Toriyama. So they had like that Toriyama look, but it just wasn't into them. No, I wasn't. The Giants and Daima never mentioned another Planet of Giants Far Worse. Oh, yeah, that's true. He did. I can't remember what they were called. They were like the Giga Giants or something like that. But yeah, Far Worse Giants, and they didn't do anything with that. So yeah, to my point, like they bring it up, but they don't ever show us. So yeah, like nothing really ended up coming from it. But it is what it is. I mean. But let's talk about Goma, like the main villain of Dragon Ball Daima. Some people were speculating it probably wasn't going to be Goma, it was going to be Dr. Ariansu. And then Ku came on the scene, and people were angry because Ku's design was a little too silly. And they thought Ku was going to be the main villain. And then Do shows up. And then it ends up this whole time being Goma, who we got in the original episode. First episode, they told us it was going to be Goma. Everybody was like, no way, it's Goma. But, yep. It's Goma. So I really didn't.
Goma's so boring.
Well, here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. I did not love Goma in the beginning, but I actually really liked him by the end. Even though I wasn't like very into his character, it was still enjoyable. Like he was straightforward, like most Dragon Ball villains. Like I can't remember who said it, but it was another YouTuber, and he said that Goma in episode 1 is kind of like Pilaf from OG Dragon Ball, where he's small and he's silly. And then, like, by the finale, he's basically Jiren, where he's, like, all powerful and, like, this immovable force. And I think that's what I liked about him. Like, he was very nostalgic in terms of, like, having a silly villain. And then, like, when it came time for him to square off, he did, you know? Like you said, you already talked about Goma being silly, but you want to expand on that? Like, what did you think about him that was boring?
I thought his attitude and like personality was boring, but in terms of there were things I liked about him too, like the fact that they made him small and weak looking, and so when he got his third eye power, he made himself really freaking huge, like as big as a giant. I think that's like an obvious show of how much.
Real quick, let me interrupt you. I think your mic is having some issues. It's coming in like with a little bit of static. Maybe you need to like unplug it, and plug it back in. But while you sort that out real quick, I do want to get to this chat, and then you can go ahead and interrupt me whenever you get your mic fixed again. Phantom Flame says, I wonder if they got the idea for Goma and Purunga's size from the Giants. They were doing this weekly. That's true. I guess you could make the argument that they were designing the Giants and then they were like, oh, let's make Goma big. But I actually think that probably came from Superhero, because Cell Max was giant, and then Orange Piccolo, of course, ended up being giant. And I was like, okay, so we're just doing more kaiju stuff. That's interesting, Phantom Flame. I guess the kaiju stuff probably would have been from Dragon Ball Superhero, but I think Toriyama was already a big fan of kaiju. Of course, going all the way back to the Ozaru in Dragon Ball, the great ape form, if you will. So, I don't know, are you there? Have you got your mic issues fixed yet?
Is it better? Is it fixed?
Yeah, it's fixed. You're good now. But yeah, go ahead. What were you saying about Goma?
So what I was saying was, I liked that he turned very huge. It showed that he was insecure, and that kind of goes with his character because he's annoying and scrawny and loud. And so I liked that he
was a menace.
Made everyone kids. I liked that he made everyone kids at the beginning. Like at the beginning, I thought honestly, he would. I thought it was kind of dumb at the beginning when I first watched it. I was like, why would he make these people kids? But now that I think about it, it just goes well with his character, seeing how he acted throughout the whole series.
Yep, easily. Real quick,
like you said, he was like a goofball villain. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then like when it came down to it, he's like slamming everybody around. Of course, he's got a power up, but he is not being silly anymore. He is demolishing everybody.
Yeah, he was done.
Yeah. Drex Forger says, is it true we are getting Dragon Ball Daima in Fortnite? I keep hearing rumors about it. Yeah, apparently, again, I'm not too plugged into the Fortnite scene. Iduname is more of a Fortnite player than I am, but from what I understand, there are leakers who are saying that Dragon Ball Daima skins are like in the code of the game or something like that. Iduname, do you know anything about that?
I do not, but I wouldn't put it past Epic Games, because they've kind of just put everything in Fortnite at this point. So they already have so much Dragon Ball Super stuff and Dragon Ball Z stuff. So I don't see why they wouldn't put Dragon Ball Daima, considering how popular it is.
And Drex, I'm assuming since Goku Mini and Goku or Vegeta Mini are kids, they probably wouldn't fit like the traditional model of Fortnite characters. So they'll probably like add adult Super Saiyan 4 Goku from Daima. If I had to guess, I'm not saying that's what's going to happen, but that's just my wild guess. So Iduname, like you were talking about earlier, there are plenty of new characters that they introduced in Dragon Ball Daima. Which new character was your favorite? For me, I really struggled to choose between Majin Ku and Glorio, but I think Glorio is my favorite because he starts out like very cold, basically a traitor, literally a traitor, I should say. And then like he has this beautiful arc where at the end he decides to wish to turn everybody back into adults. Made complete sense. It was like the most, I don't want to say like competent, but I'm just going to say it competent. Like Dragon Ball Super, I don't think there were any characters in Dragon Ball Super that had an arc like Glorio did. It was pretty well executed, so I think he's my favorite character. What about you? Who was your favorite new character in Dragon Ball Daima?
I'm being honest. I would say, honestly, Glorio was like he's not my favorite, but just since we were just talking about him real fast,
Yep.
he was kind of boring, but not like boring in a bad way. Like I like this character, but halfway through, I kind of just predicted what was gonna happen at the end. Yeah, if you know what I mean. I kind of knew he was gonna just have a change of heart because of Goku, and so my favorite character, honestly, I think it's that one dude, the one who traded his belt
Hibiscus or
with the eye
Hibis?
or whatever. Yeah, Hibis, whatever his
Yeah,
name is. He's funny.
and then
I think
Ku
he's just silly.
Ku refused to promote him or give him that position. Like he was like, "Ooh, me, I
That's
want
funny.
it," and Ku was like, "Nah." I think that's all. Phantom Flame says, I wonder who the Majin that Arinsu and Marba created before Ku and Du was. Perfect opportunity for a Miss Boo. I believe that they confirmed that it was Boo, but I'm not positive. You might be onto something, Phantom Flame, but I believe Marba said that she made Boo for Bibbidi. And then I think next she made Ku and Du, but I'm probably missing something. Drex Forger says, I really liked Du, not gonna lie. Broken Dimension says, Goma is pretty decent. He's better than most of GT's villains. I would say it's been too long since I've seen Dragon Ball GT, but I'm just going to trust you and say that Goma probably is better than most of GT's villains. I do name. Let's talk about Dr. Arinsu for a bit. So Dr. Arinsu was interesting, but ultimately she ended up being another villain to hero character like Vegeta. I would have liked her more as a villain, but I guess she is okay. I mean, it's kind of to your point with Glorio. You said Glorio, you kind of saw the turn coming. With Dr. Arinsu, I think my problem with her was that I didn't see her turn coming. Like, it was a little late in the game for me to, like, buy the villain to hero arc like Vegeta and Glorio have. But, I mean, I guess she's okay, honestly. Like I said, I would have preferred her as a villain. What did you think?
I'm not gonna lie. I didn't expect her to turn good evil or good either, and have like the turn she had at the end.
Where she's,
But
like,
I think it's
basically the vice
mostly to do
president.
with her creating those margins, because they just seem to like she seemed to kind of have like an emotional connection with them at some points in the show, where they were being nice to her and stuff.
That's a good point. Kind of like a mother's love, like maybe like the child softening her heart. You could say, kind of like, oh, you know what? That's exactly what
Yeah, kind
happened
of
with
like that.
exactly what happened with Vegeta. Vegeta said, I think it was in Dragon Ball Z in the Buu saga after during the fight with Goku and Kid Buu. Vegeta's like, I had a family of my own, and that just made me more soft. And he wanted to be evil like you. No, that was during the fight with Majin Vegeta. Yeah, but that's the same concept that they're running with Arinsu, basically. So that's cool. Dark Cloud Uchiha said, what about Rymus? I think he either has a third eye, good eye, like the opposite of the evil third eye. I don't know. I think the evil third eye is just like trinkets from a pawn shop. And then Broken Dimension says, Dr. Arinsu and Glory are the best characters from Daima. Honestly, I like Majin Ku and Majin Du more than Dr. Arinsu. If that might sound crazy. But yeah, Du and Ku were funny gag characters. Like, Majin Ku really won my heart. Honestly, I'm glad he became the king. It was unexpected, but it made sense because, like, throughout the show, they're showing you how he's, like, the smartest and the wisest. He's not the strongest, but he's still decently strong. So they kind of, like, set him up perfectly. Like, he was even more intelligent than Dr. Arinsu, you know?
Yeah, I really liked him too.
And then, I guess Du, I was less impressed with, but I think Du as a character only works because he's like Majin Ku's sidekick, you know? You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Who's the fat one, right?
Yeah, Du is the yellowish fat one that looks more like Boo, and then Ku. Oh, that's another thing I forgot to mention. I originally really liked Ku's design when everybody else hated it because they were taking the Cyberman design and fusing it with Kid Buu. And I thought that was a really cool thing to like harken back to Dragon Ball Z's Saiyan saga. So I thought like winning formula.
I really liked his design too. Like when I couldn't believe people didn't like it when you told me.
Yeah, I was surprised, and people were like doing redesigns to try to make it look more threatening. I was like, guys, this is not necessary. You know, like sometimes a Dragon Ball villain looks a little bit weird. Like Frieza, you know, a little bit weird. First form Cell, a little bit weird. You know, like sometimes these characters just look a little bit weird, but you roll with it. Especially Buu. Like, Buu is the weirdest Dragon Ball Z character. I don't know why I didn't mention him sooner. Oh, speaking of Buu, I do name. Here's one thing that I think most people would say, even Broken Dimension says in the chat, Majin Buu should have been there. In my opinion, I need him to meet Do and Ku. 100%. They did not think to bring Majin Buu to the realm of the Majins. That was, to say the least, weird, especially considering that he was in the first episode. And then in the second episode, he's in there for one shot after he's a kid, and he runs across the screen. What did you think of that? Are you, like, disappointed that Majin Buu wasn't incorporated into the series? Or does it just not matter?
I didn't even realize that Majin Buu was included and turned into a kid.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a blink and you miss it type thing. Like, he's literally like a kid running across the screen in episode 2 for like 1 second, and then he's gone.
So when that happens, does he actually turn into Kid Buu? Or is he just a little...
He's just a little fat Buu, funnily enough.
That is funny.
Yeah. But, like I was saying, I would have liked it more if he actually went with them to the Demon Realm. But guys, if you do want more Majin Buu content, you can go ahead and read the manga, because Majin Buu actually got some shine in the Moro arc, which I love. Moro arc is...
Does that prove that Buu's age? Majin Buu's age?
What do you mean? Oh, are you talking about...
that Majin's age?
Yeah, like you're talking about like how... Okay, so you're saying like Majin Buu was created by Marba from like the pot. And he probably came out like he did, like Ku did and Do did. You know, Ku and Do weren't children. They were basically formed already. Whereas Majin Buu somehow turned back into a child. So I guess the assumption is they probably come out in peak fighting condition. And then they could possibly be de-aged. That's the only way I would make sense of that. But I think you just found a plot hole. So good for you. That's actually a pretty good find that I did not know of. Broken Dimension says, Majin Buu is a cheat character. It's probably the reason why Toriyama didn't let him go to the Demon Realm. This show would have been very short. I think you're talking about how Majin Buu like can basically reform and not die. I don't know if I agree with that, because most of the fights in this show was Goku and Vegeta basically bulldozing their enemies. And I really like that. I thought it was like a fun aspect of the show. Like they didn't like... I think the only time they struggled was, let's see, Goku basically, the fight with Tamagami 1 was straightforward. Vegeta's fight with Tamagami 2, a little bit of struggle, but not really. They didn't fight Tamagami 3, and then the Goma fight was, of course, a huge struggle.
It reminded me of Dragon Ball, or OG Dragon Ball, just where, if you think about it, Goku was just stronger than a lot of people.
Yeah.
Until, like, he started fighting Piccolo and, you know, training with, Kami and, you know, people like that.
Yeah, like in the beginning he's super strong, but then he finds out there's way stronger people out there and he's not as strong as he thought he was. Yeah, exactly. I think you're right on the money there. Let's get into like the final topic of the Daima section. And guys, if you have anything else you want to add to the conversation, go ahead and let us know, because after we finish the Daima section, we're going to move on to the Super Manga Chapter. So if you have any other comments about Daima that you think we missed, go ahead and let us know and we'll get to it. So the final thing I want to talk about with Dragon Ball Daima is the Super Saiyan 3 and the Super Saiyan 4 elephants in the room. And whether or not they're plot holes, which Super Saiyan 4 you like more. So this is just going to be a broad discussion of both forms. Obviously, the finale had Goku going through all of his forms. He went through Super Saiyan 1, 2, 3, and 4. But I guess let's go alpha numerically. And we'll start with Super Saiyan 3, mainly concerning Vegeta. What did you think about Vegeta finally getting Super Saiyan 3? Was it a big surprise for you? Were you excited? Were you like, finally his time has come? Because There were a lot of memes of, like, Goku says, Vegeta, want to hear a joke? Vegeta's like, what? Goku's like, Super Saiyan 3. Vegeta's like, I don't get it. And then Goku's like, yeah, that's right, you don't. So that's not true anymore. That's not true anymore. Vegeta's got Super Saiyan 3 now, so.
Is that like an actual thing he said?
No, it's a meme that's being shared around online, but it sounds...
That's hilarious.
It sounds
That's
real.
So funny.
It actually sounds in character. Antonio Cruz says, what do you guys think about Super Saiyan 4 and Daima? I think it's pretty cool. Wish he had the black hair, though. Yeah, we're actually talking about that after...
Oh my god, Super Saiyan 4 is so freaking awesome, but I'm not going to say anything because Super Saiyan 3, Vegeta getting Super Saiyan 3, when I seen that, you know what that reminded me of? Goku getting Super Saiyan 3. I was like, oh my god, he finally did it. I remember when Vegeta got Super Saiyan 2, I was like, oh my god, he finally did it. And that's the same exact feeling I got when I seen him reach Super Saiyan 3.
Yeah, I mean, I remember...
My boy did it.
And I like how his hair's different. Like Gotenks and Goku both have like the hair long down their backs, but Vegeta's just sticks up to the side a little bit. It's not exactly up like his regular hair is. On first glance, it looks like it is, but if you look closer, it's more like sideways. Like it's more like not down the back, but it's more like in a straight line.
I definitely agree with you. I think that it looks really cool, and they did a good job not making it look the same. And now that you mentioned Gotenks, I think that considering that it's Goten and Trunks fused, that they should have actually not given him that hairstyle, and they should have mixed it up or just done something completely different.
Yeah. Yeah, 100%. Sorry, are you going to say something else?
Vegeta.
Yeah.
Cool.
Oh, you know what? we never really talked about this, or if we did, I didn't remember. Who is your favorite Dragon Ball character in general? Like, is Vegeta your favorite?
No, I think my favorite Dragon Ball character in general is Goten, but also Goku.
Okay. My fiance, we're actually watching Dragon Ball Super right now. She watched all of Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z. I had to, of course, show her from the beginning. And her takeaway after OG Dragon Ball was that Goku was her favorite. And then after Dragon Ball Z, Vegeta is her favorite. So I can't wait to see what she's going to be like once Vegeta gets Super Saiyan 3. I think that's a big moment for Vegeta fans. But anyway, one more question about Super Saiyan 3, and then we will move on to Super Saiyan 4. And that is, which Super Saiyan 3 form do you think looks cooler? Is it Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta or Super Saiyan 3 Goku? Ball is in your court.
It's not. I don't really think either of them look better
Than the other?
I just think both of them look really cool.
Okay.
Like I said earlier, I think that it's a really good decision to not give them the same hairstyle. Like, I'm glad that if Vegeta goes Super Saiyan 1 or 2, that doesn't look exactly the same as Goku's hair. Same thing with Gohan and stuff. I think that it's cool that all of them have different hairstyles when they transform.
Yeah, it's a good move.
So if Vegeta would have had Goku's hair, I would have thought it was I still would have thought it was cool.
Yeah.
But it's even cooler that he has his own hairstyle. And like what's his name said, it kind of does look like Beast Gohan in my opinion too.
Yeah.
Drake said that in the chat.
Drake said that Super Saiyan 3 Vegeta kind of looks like Beast Gohan. Yeah, he does. He does. The big, long hair. Beast Gohan's hair is more up. Vegeta's is a little bit more sideways. Not like down the back or to the left or right, but more in the back. Anyway, very diplomatic answer, I do name. So I guess you're saying you don't think one is better than the other. They're just different. And that's not a bad thing. You know, sometimes forms are just different. How about Super Saiyan 4? This is where the real controversy comes in. Super Saiyan 4, of course, Toriyama's version, he designed it from, according to Nakatsuru, so very reliable source. He's the one that basically oversaw the show. He says that Toriyama designed it as his own version of Dragon Ball GT's Super Saiyan 4 with his own, style to it. Which Super Saiyan 4 do you think is better? Nakatsuru's original Dragon Ball GT Super Saiyan 4 Goku design, or the new Daima Goku for Super Saiyan 4?
I honestly like the OG one better, but the Daima one, I think the big hands and stuff, like the more apey kind of figure, looks really cool. And I think the only thing that I didn't like about Daima was that it didn't have like the hair, not the hair, but the same like outfit.
Well, I think there's a few like little nitpicks I can make with the new Daima Super Saiyan 4 form. So, for example, in Dragon Ball GT, I really liked how he has his belt after he transforms. In Daima, when he literally like takes his shirt off, and when he does, the belt goes with it. I think the belt is kind of more necessary to Super Saiyan 4 because just having his pants looks a little bit goofy. I don't want to say like it's totally goofy, but it's definitely weird. It feels like Goku's naked in a way because he's like most of the time has his belt, so it's like a little weird.
Yeah, that's how I feel. That's literally what I was trying to say.
And then another thing was his arms. At first, it annoyed me how the fur didn't go all the way down to his wrists, but after like I watched it a bit, I was like, you know what, this is cool. I actually don't mind this because, to your point, the arms are a bit bigger, and apparently, like gorillas, that's similar to how the hair will go down their arms. Like it's not going to be completely covered. So I think that's pretty cool. How like he leaned more into the primal ape form of the Super Saiyan this time. And there's a whole aspect of like the red hair versus the black hair. I'll ask you, but first let me say, I honestly think the red eyes and the red hair on the new form are cooler than the black hair and the yellow eyes on the old form. And I say that because it just is. I don't have like a good explanation. Some people say like the eyes should be a different color than the hair to not oversaturate the design with one color, I guess. That's the argument with Super Saiyan being blonde hair and green or blue eyes. It depends on the coloring, but I like the Daima design a bit more.
I definitely like the black haired version a lot better.
Phantom Flame says, sorry, had to handle something, so with the Majin thing, Aransu mentions defeating a previous Majin that she and Marba created and how it had to at least be strong enough to defeat a Tamagami. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah, Super Saiyan 4 Goku Daima's pants are different now than how we've seen in the past. Yeah, we talked about that. Drex Forger says, Daima Super Saiyan 4 is more like primal and looks more like a gorilla with big hands. Phantom Flame says, Note from Super Dragon Ball Heroes also has red hair and red eyes in her Super Saiyan 4 concept art. Okay, so Note is the female protagonist in Super Dragon Ball Heroes. Apparently, her concept design for Super Saiyan 4 had red eyes and red hair. That's pretty cool. Antonio Cruz says, I low-key like the red skin on the new Super Saiyan 4, and I think it's better than GT Super Saiyan 4. So that's another vote for Daima Super Saiyan 4. Broken Dimensions. The main problem I always had with Super Saiyan 4 was the red fur. It should have always been black or brown. Okay, I actually want to get into that. And then Phantom Flame says, well, also if they did red and gold, people would equate it with the Limit Breaker. Yeah, because they Limit Breaker in Dragon Ball Heroes was also like a new take on these Super Saiyan 4 with a bit more red involved. But let's go back to Broken Dimensions, because that's an interesting point. He says that Super Saiyan 4 should have always had black or brown fur, and it never should have been red. That's a good point, but I think it's one of those things where red just looks cool, so they went with it. What do you think?
I don't know. It's kind of weird because I've always like when GT first come out and I first found out about Super Saiyan 4, I always thought that Super Saiyan 4 shouldn't even be like, Super Saiyan 4. It kind of just seemed like
Its own branch.
a mastered version. It seemed like a mastered version of the Great Ape form. So, like, to me, I kind of agree with him saying it shouldn't have even been red colored because they could have saved that and just made it brown. They made it where he can go into that form and then go Super Saiyan and turn gold, I thought that idea to me is kind of cool. Something they definitely could have done.
Yeah, Phantom Flame says he equates the original designer for Super Saiyan 4, Nakatsuru, says he equates red with power, but was considering gold and gray beforehand. But I don't know. To your point about Super Saiyan 4 feeling like its own branch, That's interesting because, again, the Super Saiyan 4 talk is going crazy, but I mean, what else are you going to talk about? This was like the big reveal at the end of Daima. It should definitely take up a lot of the conversation. In Dragon Ball GT, Super Saiyan 4 was very like intrinsic to the Saiyan heritage, like the Great Ape and the Uzaru. Like you said, you had to like access the Golden Uzaru form, and then you had to control that and become the Super Saiyan 4. But you didn't have to necessarily access Super Saiyan 3 to become Super Saiyan 4. So in Dragon Ball GT, it feels like it should be its own branch of transformation. Like how Gohan found his own branch of transformations through Ultimate Gohan and then Beast Gohan. And then, again, Goku has Ultra Instinct, Vegeta has Ultra Ego. It feels like Super Saiyan 4 probably should have a different name, like Uzaru Unleashed or something like that. You know, I'm just making this up off the top of my head, but like you said, like something like different. Like it's like a different branch, you know?
Right.
And I think that actually goes with the idea of Broly having the access to his Great Ape power in the Super Broly movie. To your point, maybe following GT's logic, he could get Super Saiyan 4, but Daima establishes something weird. Daima basically establishes that Super Saiyan 4 in Daima is not necessarily part of the Uzaru, but it is. So Goku gets basically this power awakened by Neva, but then at the end, Goku says that he felt like there was something else there, but he trained and trained and trained and couldn't access it until Neva unlocked it. So let me ask you this. Do you like the way that Goku unlocked it more in GT, or do you prefer the Daima version?
I don't even remember how he unlocked it in GT, so I can't answer that. But I do think the way he unlocks it in Daima is kind of silly.
Yeah, okay, we'll talk about that. So in Dragon Ball Daima, Neva just basically notices that Goku's getting his butt beat, and he's like, hey, let me give you a little bit of a boost. And then Goku unlocks the Super Saiyan 4 form. Now, it was a really cool transformation. I liked how like they had the animation with the lines and the squiggles turning into the tail. But again, like you said, it was a little bit of a I don't want to say it. It was basically like a giveaway, like a form like you just give away. But I mean, and what makes it worse is that Goku did say that he felt like something else was there, but he couldn't access it. So, you know, Neva basically just gives him the form. And, of course, we already talked about how that can't work with Dragon Ball Super because when Goku is fighting Beerus, he says that Super Saiyan 3 is his final form. But, again, like I said, that doesn't really... Like the canon of Dragon Ball and the continuity, there's already things that contradict. We talked about that earlier in the stream about how Dragon Ball Super doesn't connect with the end of Z, but we assume that it still happens. Antonio Cruz in the chat says, I mean, he does got a point, but red is a cold color. I guess you mean cold as in cool. Phantom Flame says, the irony how, oh my gosh, that's what people mean when they say, oh, that's cold. That's because it's cool. Okay, I get it now. Phantom Flame says, the irony, however, is in GT is speculated that Super Saiyan 4 might not be an actual Super Saiyan form. So maybe Super Uzaru controlled similar to Kale's theming. Okay. It's been a long time since I've seen Dragon Ball GT. I honestly need to do a rewatch because I basically like rewatch or reread Dragon Ball at least once a year, so I think I have everything memorized. But GT is like 10 years ago for me. What about you? For you, Adonam, when's the last time you've seen GT? Probably similar to me. Like
it's been so long. I have a Game Boy cartridge though that lets me watch a GT episode on it.
That is so interesting. Drex Forger says, honestly, the GT was better. I guess you're saying the Super Saiyan 4 version was better in GT. Phantom Plane says, well, on the animation sheet, Goku does have an Uzaru outline, but it gets cut off in the anime. Oh, that's interesting. That's cool. So I guess originally they had a better plan with connecting it. Antonio Cruz says, I much prefer the way he gets the form in GT. The way Goku got Super Saiyan 4 Daima is bland. The way he unlocked Super Saiyan 4 in GT was very bad. He brewed coffee and his tail magically grew back. Not brewed, churned. All right. have we exhausted the Daima talks? Is there anything else you want to say about Dragon Ball Daima Idu name before we move on?
Yeah, it's a good show. I enjoyed it.
It was a good show. Overall, it was good. Phantom Flame says, I saw GT yesterday to double check if Goku became a Force Ghost. Huh. If Goku became a Force Ghost. Now, I did see the Dragon Ball GT A Hero's Legacy movie. And honestly, way back in the podcast history, we were thinking about doing a Dragon Ball Specials ranked. So I rewatched it for that reason. Goku does become a Force Ghost. He just appears to Goku Jr. and then leaves. So I think like there's like the aspect of him like becoming one with the dragon, kind of being like becoming one with the Force. That's interesting. Antonio Cruz says, count how many retcons in Daima are there. That's a good idea for a video. But there's probably too many to count. But I guess it's something that I would take on. All right, so here's where things get interesting. For the YouTube audience watching at home, if you are Dragon Ball Super, are we getting a Daima Season 2? Drex says, no, probably not. Probably not. But we could. I mean, they don't really communicate with the audience very clearly. They just surprise us with stuff. But here's where things are going to get interesting. So, for the audience watching at home, if you are here for the Daima discussion, it's mainly over. We will do a short Q&A section at the end where we talk about anything and everything that we want to. However, right now we're going to get into the Dragon Ball Super Manga Chapter 104 discussion as promised. And here's where things get interesting. Iduname has not read it. Iduname, you have not read the special Chapter 104, so basically how we're going to handle this is I'll give you a brief recap, I'll give my thoughts on it, and then you tell me if you think it sounds cool. Does that sound fair?
Yeah, that's good.
Okay. All right, so based purely off memory, there is a field trip going on, and this is, of course, set before the Dragon Ball Super superhero movie, as well as the superhero prequel arc where Goten and Trunks became superheroes. Goten and Trunks are playing games, video games. Specifically, they're playing a video game of the character Clean God. Now, Clean God is just this vague character that they mentioned in the superhero prequel arc, and they're apparently big fans of him. Well, Goten is. Trunks thinks Clean God is a loser. Apparently, Trunks thinks like the tights and stuff are corny and weird, which is consistent with the Dragon Ball Z version of Trunks when he's a kid. If you'll remember, whenever Goten sees Great Saiyaman for the first time, he thinks it's cool. But whenever Trunks sees Great Saiyaman for the first time, he thinks it's weird. So, with that being said, Trunks basically... This chapter is basically like the journey of Trunks not liking superheroes to thinking they're cool. So Trunks basically goes to school and then they have a field trip. They go to a museum, and the museum section is actually really cool because they go ahead and go to like this statue exhibit where all the statues are, and they're heroes. So we actually get statues of iconic Dragon Ball characters that Toyotaro had no business putting in Dragon Ball Super, but he did it anyway. Like, one of the statues are the blonde guy from the Dragon Ball Z Otherworld Tournament filler arc. I think his name was Olive or Olivu or Olibu. He had, like, the poofy blonde hair. Do you remember him? He's actually, like, one of the first fights in the Boost Fury game. He has his own statue. So, Toyotaro is establishing that that character, or at least a version of him, was canon to the Earth. And because he's based off of, like, a Greek design... I guess and his statue was like the first one outside of the exhibit. So I guess the idea is he's probably the first hero that Earth ever had, is what I'm assuming, because it's the first statue you see outside the exhibit and it's really big. So I guess that's the idea. And then once they...
Pretty cool.
Yeah, that is cool, right? And then once they walk through the halls of the museum some more, you actually see other characters as statues, like Master Mutaito, the guy that killed Demon King, or not killed, but sealed Demon King Piccolo. So it makes sense that he would be memorialized as a statue at this museum. I was like, oh, that's cool. You know, that's pretty dope. There's also like other minor characters in there that I honestly can't remember. They have Kid Goku as a statue, but there's a question mark over his face because in Dragon Ball, after he killed King Piccolo, they basically never see his face. They don't know what he looks like. They basically forget about Goku. And this whole thing about Goku is basically that he's a hero people don't remember. And I don't know why they don't remember him, but they just don't. They remember Mutaito, but not Goku, but it is what it is. I actually always thought it was pretty neat. And then there's also like a statue of Great Saiyan, so he's recognized officially as one of the greatest heroes of Earth, which makes a lot of sense. And then they see the Mr. Satan statue. They have a joke about Mr. Satan because the tour guide is basically talking about how all of these statues are heroes and they're like humble. And then boom, there's Mr. Satan. He's got a big statue. It's pretty funny. Anyway, they go out for lunch, and remember, this is just Trunks. There's no Goten. And then there's like bank robbers that supposedly show up, and Trunks is about to freak out. But it's just like a set, so they're actually filming a live-action Klingon movie. Here's the funny thing, though. Real criminals show up, and they're actually here to cause a mess, and what happens next will shock you. Klingon, who is played by an actor, actually has powers. He basically beats the criminals up and talks to Trunks, because I forgot to mention, but Trunks actually almost uses his abilities. He like uses them a little bit to like punch a guy, and he's about to go crazy on him, but then Klingon's like, hold it now. Don't let your powers be seen. You don't want to ruin your high school life or whatever. And Trunks is really impressed because of Klingon like being out there, helping people, defeating the villains. And he like gets this inspiration from it. And then after the whole thing is over, Trunks goes home to Goten's house. So he goes to Goten's house, and Goten's like, hey, Trunks, what's up? And Trunks plays the Klingon video game, and Goten is surprised. And then that's whenever they basically decide to become heroes, and they basically take Saiyaman as inspiration, the Great Saiyaman as inspiration when they put their names, when they design their names. And then their costumes are kind of a blend of Great Saiyaman and Klingon. And then while this is happening, it's revealed that Klingon is actually Gohan in disguise. So the thing I love about this is that Gohan is filling in for the Klingon actor. And of course, if you remember in the Dragon Ball Super anime, Gohan actually was filling in for the Great Saiyaman actor. So some parallels there. But Gohan is actually filling in for the Great Saiyaman actor as a favor to Mr. Satan. And in a roundabout way, because I remember being annoyed in the superhero prequel arc whenever they revealed that Goten and Trunks were superheroes. I thought it was a little bit annoying how they weren't, like they have the Saiyaman X1 and 2 names, but they're talking about Klingon so much. And I was a little annoyed by that. And then this really establishes that in a roundabout way, Gohan kind of inspired Goten and Trunks to be heroes. I thought that was pretty cool. And then the chapter basically ends with these bikers driving down a road, and they're about to run over a little girl, and I was like, oh my god, this is crazy. Like, it's so insanely evil, like it's almost corny how evil these bikers are. So they're about to run over this little girl, and this billboard comes out of the sky and lands in front of the biker, and it's a billboard of Klingon. And then I think Trunks is talking about, oh, I have to fight in other worlds, but even though I'm not there to fight, we are. And then boom, Saiyaman X1 and 2 pop out, and that's where the chapter ends. And no word on the next chapter coming out, but that's where that ends. So there's the full chapter recap. So what do you think about it,
Wow.
Iduname?
That deserves a round of applause, first of all. It's a great recap.
Pretty cool recap, I gotta say. What do
That's
you?
pretty good. That's pretty good. I think it's very interesting. I think it's cool that Trunks is coming around to being a superhero, because I was wondering why I was wondering how he came around to the superhero stuff.
Yeah, like where did that even come
So it's
from?
pretty cool they explained it. I didn't know that Gohan was Klingon though. That's kind of cool.
Yeah, I think he was Klingon for like that one time on the set of the movie, but he ended up really running with it, and it was actually pretty cool. Like, uh,
Your cat's really going crazy in the background, isn't it?
I didn't even hear him. I have
Is that
this
what that
headset
is?
on. Yeah, it probably is. Uh, he's a little tyke. I have my headset on. I honestly didn't hear him, but yeah, Klingon is dope. I really like Klingon as a character, honestly. This made me like Klingon more. As far as the Great Saiyaman 1 and 2 thing, I think it's a fun way to keep Goten and Trunks in the story, honestly. And as far as my favorite part of the chapters, I think the museum was cool because I think that's where you perked up and you were like, oh, that's cool. They actually have like the guy from the Otherworld tournament immortalized as a statue. Could that
Oh
mean
man, I always love when shows like do little references like that, just to kind of make the viewers happy. It's always nice.
And it's a testament to Toyotaro, and this is where I think you'll really be able to get into the conversation. It's a testament to Toyotaro's worthiness of succeeding Toriyama. So, of course, Toriyama is no longer with us. Very tragic. We've talked about that ad nauseum. It's definitely like, what do you do with the Dragon Ball brand now? Do you want to continue without Toriyama? Do you want to find somebody else? Well, the somebody else was actually chosen by Toriyama. Now, there is some contention to that because apparently the interview where Toyotaro says that he was chosen by Toriyama was actually contested because it's originally translated from Japanese to French and then the French was translated to English, but nobody has the original Japanese text, so they can't double reference it. But the understanding, generally speaking, is that Toriyama chose Toyotaro as his successor. And Toyotaro knows Dragon Ball. He knows it. The museum had references for sure, but in the past he's demonstrated it like to a very extreme degree as far as his knowledge, I guess you could say. So yeah, I think Toyotaro is this chapter was obviously the first one after Toriyama's passing. I think he nailed it. What do you think? Do you think, I know you didn't read the chapter, but just speaking about Toyotaro, what do you think about him? Do you think he is the guy for the manga?
I can't really say anything compared to what we've seen so far.
Right.
But if Akira Toriyama chose him, then I trust him to do good by him. But we'll only see by waiting for the next chapters to come out and reading them.
That's true. That's a very valid point. Phantom Flame says dialogue in the chapter is a bit stiff, but I get what they were going for, and I think it was a sweet moment on Dragon Ball overall. It was really sweet. I really liked.
Facts.
I really liked like the simplicity of it. I liked how it harkened back to the Great Saiyaman arc in Dragon Ball Z. That's my favorite arc in Dragon Ball Z. Was Gohan in high school. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. I loved it. It's amazing. My favorite arc in Dragon Ball Z. And some people hate it, but I loved it. But yeah, very sweet stuff. Kind of like real slice of life stuff. Drex Forger says,
Imagine if Gohan fights Black Frieza with the Clean God outfit.
You know what?
That would be the most crazy what if ever for Dragon Ball.
Well, here's the thing. Here's the funny thing, I do name. We were actually talking about this in a previous podcast of like the future of the Dragon Ball Super manga and how it will connect to everything that's happened since Black Frieza popped up. And I think it was you that had the theory that Black Frieza would go to Earth after he's like finished whatever he's doing to basically get revenge on Goku and Vegeta by destroying the Earth. But from the way the superhero arc wrapped up in the manga, with Goku and Gohan fighting to basically a stalemate to where there is no clear winner. And Goku basically says that the Earth is in your hands. Like you said, Gohan's the protector of Earth. So Goku and Vegeta are probably going to be off planet training with Beerus, and then Frieza just shows up to Earth. And I think, again, I don't think Gohan's going to beat Black Frieza, but I think he's going to be like the first fight to show how powerful Frieza is. I think that will be a pretty cool fight, you know?
I think he's gonna just straight up be like, "Yo, get the heck away from Earth and go find my dad because he's not here." and like scare him away.
You know what? That's a good point. Frieza could just be there like, where is Goku? Has Frieza ever been to
Gohan's
Beerus's
the one
planet?
dude who's been like a
I don't think so.
pacifist, but not really. Like when he was a kid, he really didn't want to fight unless he had to, and I think he's kind of still like that.
Well, he is like that to an extent, and Superhero did establish that he's going to start taking his training seriously because Goku and Vegeta weren't there to bail him out, and he had to rise to the occasion. But Super has done that before, where they basically have Gohan train, and then like afterwards he's not training. Like he trained for the Tournament of Power, and he said that he was going to start training seriously. And then after the Tournament of Power, he was in the Moro arc in the manga, and he was still pretty trained up and strong. But then whenever the superhero arc came around, I think the idea is he's getting swamped in work. But we did get confirmation that he was still practicing his special beam cannon or his Mankako. What's it called? Makanko Sapo? I think that's what it's called. Makanko Sapo! I think so. But yeah, he was still training his special beam cannon, so he wasn't entirely out of the game, but he was a little bit out of the game. Like he had like a little bit of he wasn't like, I don't think he was physically training as much as he was in the Tournament of Power arc, but he was there almost. I don't know, how much longer can you go for? Just out of curiosity. I don't want to keep you too long.
We'll probably have to wrap it up here soon.
All right, probably within the
Sadly.
next 10 minutes or so. All right. I guess we can start winding down. Broken Dimension says, cool chapter, but let's be real. Nobody cares, unfortunately. I want to circle back to that. Fenta Flame says, interestingly, with Gohan substituting for Clean God, it's very likely he was also the one who autographs Dr. Heto's Clean God photo. That's true. That is really true because they showed up. Dr. Heto did show up for the signing physically, and Clean God was there to sign it. So that's true. Broken Dimension says, I think it's a high chance that the Moro and Granola arcs will never be animated. It's because the DBS movies have shown to straight up ignore the manga and only go forward in the timeline. Okay, Broken Dimensions is basically giving us two really great topics to end the podcast off with. First, he says, cool chapter, but nobody cares. And then he says, the Granola and Moro arcs will never be animated. All right, that's a very good last couple comments for us to basically finish out the show with. So let's tackle the first one first. Cool chapter, but let's be real, nobody cares. So here's the thing. From what I understand, there was this controversy behind the scenes where they weren't allowed to put out more Dragon Ball Super manga because of some legal mumbo jumbo. And then somehow, some way, they got cleared for this one shot. That's why they called it a one shot. And they're not officially returning to monthly chapters. So I think Toyotaro and the team at Shueisha was basically in a rough spot to decide what story to do because they had to tell a story, a self-contained story. So what they went with was a simple prequel to the prequel to Superhero. So it was a prequel of a prequel to basically not necessarily because the Dragon Ball Super manga already had the chapter 103 end with the handing off to the next generation between Goku and Gohan. And this was Gohan handing off the great Saiyan hero stuff to Trunks and Goten, So I think that's what really this chapter was here for. And I think I liked it for that. But you do have a good point. The vast majority of people are this is cool, but where's Black Frieza? You know what I'm saying, Adonai? I think that's where most people are at. What do you think?
I absolutely agree with you.
100%. And then Broken Dimension says, I think it's a high chance that the Moro and Granola arcs will never be animated. So let's talk about that. So, Adonai, you can obviously join in on this because you are a learned reader of the Moro and Granola arcs.
It will never be animated. I honestly think that is a little bit of a reach because those are two of my favorite arcs in all of Dragon Ball Super. It beats Tournament of Power. And I know that might sound crazy to some people, but I think that the Moro arc
is peak.
Really freaking cool. It is peak in my opinion, and it's just unique and different. And the only thing about it that's kind of a ripoff is him doing the suicide exploding thing. But Goku handles it like a pro. If you haven't seen it, not gonna say how he does it, but he handles it like a pro, like he always does. And the Granola arc was also really interesting and cool. And I loved seeing another Namekian and more Dragon Balls on another planet. Really interesting. Haven't seen that since OG Dragon Ball Z. Not OG Dragon Ball, but Dragon Ball Z.
And here's a good point. Let's tie it all back to Dragon Ball Daima. Dragon Ball Daima showed us Namekians on another planet with Dragon Balls in another realm. And in the the Granola arc, whenever they go to New Namek, they talk about how Namekians are from another realm altogether. And it's just like one speech bubble where they're talking about it. And then we actually find out in Dragon Ball Daima they're from the Demon Realm. So that's another connection between the Dragon Ball Super manga and the Dragon Ball Daima anime. And it really just shows you how involved Toriyama was, more so with the manga, because we know that he developed a lot of the Daima anime. So I just thought that was pretty cool. I guess we can go ahead and end it off with Phantom Flame. He's going on a Toriyama, I don't want to say rant, but it's pretty detailed. So he says, Toyotaro is more than a good enough choice for Toriyama. Toriyama himself has given him reins to do more and more and more, and often encouraged it. Toriyama was also often impressed by how close Toyotaro could get. His only advice was for Toyotaro to work on making simpler paneling, so there is a goal to understand. Well, the issue is, Akio wants half a Dragon Ball and Shueisha wants the other, while Bird Studio gets to play middleman. Really, Bird Studio should be the ones at the top, since it was Toriyama's company. And then Broken Dimension says we'll probably get a movie taking place at the end of Z or past it. So, to basically like cap off what we were talking about before we get into like the Toriyama of it all, like you were saying that the Moro arc will never be animated is a reach, because right now, what is valuable in Dragon Ball? Toriyama. He's dead. He's gone. He's passed away. But what everybody is asking for is more Toriyama Dragon Ball, and they're saying we can't get it. That's a lie. We can get more Toriyama Dragon Ball. It's the Moro and Granola arcs. He was involved with both of those. I think Moro was more Toyotaro, and then Granola was more Toriyama. But Toriyama still got his fingerprints on the Moro arc, so I do see a future where they bring...
That's a very good point.
Yeah, they have to do something with that, because when you think about it, that's the only other thing with Dragon Ball that we know of that Toriyama had an involvement with, that they could make content out of and still put his name on it and still sell it. So I think that's what they'll end up doing. Realistically, I mean, like, I don't see any other future. If they... It would be insanely dumb, and I wouldn't put this past them. Companies can be very dumb, especially Shueisha. They've had the Dragon Ball Super manga on a delay for a long time. Probably excessively so, but we don't know what's going on behind the scenes. But it would be really dumb to never bring this Super anime back. But if they didn't, they should still adapt Moro and Granola in some way, if that makes sense. Whether it's,
I think that if, like, the fact that Dragon Ball Daima come out means they're not completely against just coming out with another show. I think Dragon Ball Super will 100% come back at some point. And like you said, that's the like they're gonna use those two arcs, I feel like, to kind of give more time for the manga to push out once it is coming back out, if it does. If that makes sense. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So while they're animating all of those episodes, that's gonna give them time to wait for the new manga panel or new manga chapters to come out, which will make it where we don't have a scenario like Dragon Ball Super had when it first came out.
100%. Right on the money, of course, as always. Now, there's always the possibility that the anime doesn't come back and the manga keeps going, because Akio Ioku did say that they had plans for the next 10 years, but like Phantom Flame says, that was before Toriyama passed, so we don't know what's going on. And I've talked about this before in my videos. Dragon Ball news is, we're in a drought. All we got is DLC for video games. That's basically it. So it's rough out here, but we are doing what we have to do. All right, well, I guess we can go ahead and read one more comment and then end it because we are at time. So let's go ahead and read these last comments. Antonio Cruz says, I feel like they could animate Moro and Granola arcs, but they would have to change a few things. They wouldn't. They fit. They wouldn't really need to change anything. Phantom Flame says, and whatever Akio was talking about when he said something about 10 years of anime, but he said that stuff a little bit before things happened. We talked about that, and Broken Dimension said, they need to animate the Broly movie with the alternate script. Antonio Cruz wants to know, are you hype about the Daima DLC for Kakarot? I am. Broken Dimension says, if DBS comes back. Drex, okay, oh my god, okay, Drex, we're getting more comments. Okay, last comment. Not complaining, I appreciate the input. I did tell you guys to talk, but it's just like all of a sudden, I'm like, all right, we're closing up. So yeah, get your comments in now. So last comment. Okay, one more comment after Drex's. Drex Forger says, are we getting a DBS movie this year? Probably not. Phantom Play says, I think the next media is going to be the most important. It is. 100%. All right, guys, that's it. That's the stream. That's the podcast. As Phantom Flame says, all right, we out. So, this is it, guys. The end of the story. Real quick update. We haven't done a Dragon Discourse in a bit, but again, that's just because of scheduling and things like that. I don't know what we'll talk about next time because the anime is done, the manga's on hiatus, so we'll figure something out. Anyways, guys, that will be it for this one. I'm Toon Raider.
And I'm Aiden.
And this is Goodbye. We'll see you in the next one. Peace off.